From this to this.
All I had to do was put myself into the mind of a killer. Hardly a stretch.
From a respected Emmy-winning television actor.
This is Michael C. Hall's 4th Golden Globe nomination and first win. An accomplished broad...
To this.
I've spent so much time pretending to be him. I mean, I'm not crazy. I don't think I'm him. I don't think he thinks he's me.
The internet became obsessed with one idea. Maybe the actor who played Dexter Morgan understood the character a little too naturally. The strange interviews. The stories about following strangers around New York. The unnervingly calm voice. The way he sometimes stared at interviewers just a second too long before answering. And then the darker conversations started appearing underneath those clips. Real killers inspired by Dexter. Online communities romanticizing serial killers. Viral edits turning a fictional murderer into a Sigma male icon for emotionally detached young men. Because what made Dexter disturbing was never just the violence. It was how believable Michael C. Hall made the entire performance feel.
You actually had me believing I could have a friend. Because I swallowed your bullshit.
It wasn't bullshit!
And once audiences noticed that realism, people started digging through every interview, every convention appearance, every awkward public interaction they could find. Looking for evidence that maybe Michael C. Hall disappeared into Dexter a little too completely? There is no evidence Michael C. Hall committed crimes. He is an actor, but the footage people obsess over is real. The interviews are real. The controversies surrounding Dexter are real. And the internet has spent almost 2 decades trying to blur the line between Michael C. Hall and the fictional serial killer that made him famous. Dexter premiered on Showtime on October 1st, 2006. According to ratings data reported by Variety and the New York Times during the show's peak seasons, it became one of the network's most commercially successful original series. But what separated Dexter from older crime dramas was perspective. Audiences were not watching a serial killer from the outside. They were trapped inside his head. The narration walked viewers through stalking routines, evidence cleanup, emotional masking, and murder preparation with unnerving precision. Dexter was not framed as chaotic or monstrous all the time. He was intelligent, funny, controlled, emotionally relatable, and that changed the audience relationship completely. People stopped fearing Dexter Morgan. They started admiring him. Then internet culture amplified the entire thing into something far stranger. The murders became aesthetic. The emotional detachment became aspirational. Entire online communities started treating Dexter less like a cautionary tale and more like a personality template. Cold, calculated, smarter than everyone else in the room. And that is exactly where the Michael C. Hall clips started becoming uncomfortable. Because Hall naturally speaks in an extremely restrained, controlled way. Long pauses, precise wording, intense eye contact. A very quiet voice that almost sounds emotionally disconnected even during normal conversations.
I would say the 10th episode of the first season, doing the face plant into that room full of blood was, I mean, it was fun. It brought back memories of like slip and slide.
If another actor behaved like that, nobody would care. But because audiences already associated those traits with Dexter Morgan, ordinary interviews started looking sinister. One clip in particular completely changed internet discussions about him.
And I would go out at night to a restaurant or something that maybe had a bar and see if a person came in alone. I would endow them with reprehensible characteristics like a villain on Dexter's show. And I'd follow them through the city just to see if I could pull it off.
During an interview while discussing preparation for acting roles, Hall explained that before Dexter, he sometimes observed strangers around New York and occasionally followed people briefly to study behavior and movement patterns. Actors studying human behavior is completely normal. Method actors have described similar techniques for decades. But the internet did not hear it that way, because the man saying it was famous for playing a charming serial killer who stalked victims before murdering them.
I am a father, a son, a serial killer.
The clip spread everywhere: TikTok edits, Reddit threads, YouTube compilations with millions of views. And once creators started adding horror music and dramatic zoom-ins, the entire interview transformed online from actor discussing character research into Michael C. Hall accidentally admitting he thinks like Dexter. That became the foundation of one of the internet's strangest celebrity conspiracy theories. Not that Hall committed actual crimes, but that he somehow understood Dexter Morgan a little too naturally for people's comfort. And once audiences started looking at him through that lens, every interview afterward became evidence hunting.
You know, find a little niche audience and be able to do a number of seasons. But no, I never imagined that the show would be as broadly appealing.
Every uncomfortable laugh became suspicious. Every quiet pause became unsettling. Entire compilation channels appeared online built around one idea: Michael C. Hall acting strangely in public. Some of the clips are genuinely harmless. Hall looking tired during convention appearances. Hall pausing awkwardly before answering personal questions. Hall making dry jokes that sound darker when removed from context. But internet editing changed the emotional tone completely.
Dexter.
Well, sometimes they ask me to give them that look, and I'm like, I'm actually already giving it to you. The tricky thing about Dexter is I look so much like him.
I've spent so much time pretending to be him. I mean, I'm not crazy. I don't think I'm him.
For Dexter, it was, what if I were this person?
He's the hottest serial killer in town. Please welcome Michael C. Hall.
What is Michael's perspective of Dexter? I think it would be as easy to answer what Dexter's perspective.
And because viewers already connected Hall so strongly with Dexter, the edits started affecting audience perception in real time. Comments under those videos became eerily repetitive. He never left character. This dude is terrifying. He's literally Dexter in real life. At some point, people stopped watching Michael C. Hall interviews normally. They started analyzing them like interrogation footage. And then the real-world violence connected to Dexter made the entire conversation darker.
For the first time on television, 48 Hours is revealing letters written by the so-called Dexter killer. Police say Mark Twitchell was fascinated with the fictional serial killer on the popular TV series Dexter.
One of the most infamous cases involved Canadian filmmaker Mark Twitchell. In 2011, according to CBC News coverage and Edmonton court reporting, Twitchell was convicted of first-degree murder for killing Johnny Altinger. Investigators discovered that Twitchell openly admired Dexter and allegedly drew inspiration from the series while planning aspects of the crime. Media outlets immediately branded him the Dexter Killer. That nickname permanently changed public discussions surrounding the show, because critics started asking a deeply uncomfortable question: had Dexter crossed the line from crime drama into glorification? The concern was never that television alone creates violence. Researchers have debated media influence for decades, but Dexter felt uniquely dangerous to some critics because the audience was emotionally encouraged to root for the killer.
To the cast of Dexter, Michael C. Hall!
Dexter only targeted bad people. The narration explained his logic. The show constantly invited empathy towards someone who kills human beings with calculated precision. And internet culture made that moral confusion even worse. The rise of Sigma male edits transformed Dexter into a motivational archetype for emotionally detached young men online.
So Gator's giving you trouble, Dex?
They, ate my puppy.
This sucker? If you load her up right, she'll take down a goddamn grizzly. You may have to get closer than you'd like. But she'll do the job, I promise you that. So which will it be? Both. Excellent.
The violence stopped feeling horrifying. It became stylish. Detached masculinity became aesthetic content. Calm sociopathic behavior became internet coolness. That deeply disturbed many media critics because the show was no longer simply being watched. It was being imitated culturally. And because Michael C. Hall's performance felt so unnervingly believable, audiences started projecting Dexter's personality traits directly onto Hall himself. Another major reason the internet became fascinated with Hall was the way he discussed psychology and darkness during interviews.
One thing I did, I would go out by myself in New York and try to find someone who was also alone. Maybe go to a restaurant with a bar and have a seat in the corner and find somebody. I know this is creepy, but... And I would, watch them finish their meal and endow them with all kinds of reprehensible characteristics, a potential victim for Dexter. Yeah. I wasn't going to actually do anything. And I would see what it felt like to follow them a little bit. From a block or so away. It's easy in Manhattan because there are people everywhere.
And you never got caught?
No.
Hall often spoke thoughtfully about emotional isolation, mortality, violence, and hidden impulses beneath ordinary people, which makes sense. He spent years playing psychologically intense characters. But once clips are isolated from context online, philosophical conversations start sounding ominous. There are interviews where Hall discusses the idea that every person contains hidden darkness beneath their social mask. Philosophers, psychologists, and writers discuss concepts like that constantly. But once TikTok edits paired those quotes with Dexter murder scenes and distorted music, the internet interpreted the clips very differently.
How would you like to see Dexter end?
I don't know. It'd be cool if he's gonna die, he should die funny. Like he represents himself in court and he gets himself off and he's walking down the courthouse steps and gets hit by a bus.
That is how online mythology works. Ordinary statements slowly become evidence once audiences already want the larger story to feel true. And Michael C. Hall's naturally reserved personality accidentally fit the Dexter image perfectly. Quiet, intense, emotionally controlled, difficult to read. The more viewers associated him with Dexter Morgan, the harder it became for audiences to separate actor from character. One of the strangest parts of the entire Michael C. Hall phenomenon is how quickly internet culture stopped treating Dexter like fiction and started treating it like psychological realism. That distinction matters because most fictional killers stay clearly separated from reality in the audience's mind. Hannibal Lecter feels theatrical. Patrick Bateman feels exaggerated. Ghostface feels cinematic. But Dexter Morgan was deliberately designed to feel ordinary. That was the entire psychological hook of the character. He looked like someone you could pass in a grocery store without noticing. He had routines, social obligations, workplace conversations, awkward small talk. The horror came from the idea that someone dangerous could blend into normal life perfectly. Hall's performance made that illusion feel disturbingly convincing. According to interviews given throughout Dexter's original run, Hall approached the role with extreme restraint instead of theatrical aggression. Dexter rarely exploded emotionally. He rarely screamed. Most of the performance relied on tiny expressions, carefully controlled body language, and subtle emotional suppression. Critics repeatedly praised how believable Hall made Dexter's emotional masking feel. The problem is that audiences eventually started applying that exact same analysis to Hall himself outside the show. That is where internet obsession crossed into something psychologically weird. Because once viewers become convinced an actor feels like a character in real life, confirmation bias starts taking over completely. Every normal behavior suddenly becomes suspicious if it matches the fictional role strongly enough. And Michael C. Hall happened to possess the exact kind of naturally reserved personality that fed those assumptions endlessly online. There are dozens of interview clips where Hall appears thoughtful, distant, or difficult to read emotionally. In normal circumstances, nobody would interpret that as alarming. Plenty of actors are introverted during interviews. Plenty of celebrities become socially awkward after years of public scrutiny. But Hall carried one enormous disadvantage. He played one of the most psychologically intimate serial killers ever put on television. That changes audience perception permanently. People started studying his facial expressions the same way true crime investigators study interrogation footage. Fans began analyzing whether his smiles looked genuine, whether his pauses felt rehearsed, whether his emotional reactions appeared normal enough. Entire Reddit threads formed around microscopic details of his body language during interviews, and the algorithm rewarded every second of it. Because once one creepy compilation goes viral, dozens more appear immediately afterward. YouTube recommendations became flooded with titles like Michael C. Hall forgetting he isn't Dexter, Michael C. Hall accidentally reveals his dark side, and the disturbing reality of Dexter's actor. Most of those videos contain no actual evidence of wrongdoing whatsoever. They rely entirely on editing tone and audience projection, but tone matters online more than facts do. especially once creepy music enters the equation. A completely ordinary interview can feel deeply unsettling if someone adds low ambient drones, distorted sound effects, and dramatic zoom-ins every time the actor blinks too slowly. Internet creators understand this perfectly. Suspense editing changes audience interpretation instantly, and Michael C. Hall's naturally calm demeanor gave those editors endless material to work with. Another major factor behind the obsession is how intensely Dexter connected with socially isolated audiences online. This is something media critics discussed for years during the rise of internet anti-hero culture. Characters like Walter White, Tyler Durden, Patrick Bateman, Arthur Fleck, and Dexter Morgan became symbolic avatars for emotionally alienated viewers who felt disconnected from society. But Dexter felt uniquely personal because his internal narration constantly framed him as someone pretending to fit into normal human life while secretly feeling detached from everyone around him. Large sections of the audience deeply related to that emotional isolation. Not the violence necessarily. The emotional masking. The feeling of performing normality socially while internally feeling disconnected. Dexter verbalized emotions that many isolated viewers struggled to explain themselves. And once internet meme culture transformed Dexter into a literally me character archetype, the emotional identification intensified dramatically. That created a strange side effect for Michael C. Hall. Audiences stopped seeing him simply as an actor. They started unconsciously treating him like the physical embodiment of those feelings, which meant viewers projected all kinds of psychological assumptions onto him whether they realized it or not. The rise of short-form content accelerated that problem massively. TikTok and YouTube Shorts reward emotional immediacy above context. A 10-second clip of Hall staring silently before answering a question spreads much faster than a full interview explaining his actual personality. Algorithms prioritize emotional reaction, not nuance. So creators naturally focused on the weirdest possible moments they could isolate from interviews. One awkward smile becomes disturbing. One thoughtful pause becomes emotionally detached. One dry joke becomes serial killer energy. And once millions of viewers consume those clips repeatedly, the distorted perception starts becoming stronger than reality itself. There is also another uncomfortable layer underneath the obsession that rarely gets discussed openly. Audiences are fascinated by the idea that darkness in fiction might reflect hidden darkness in reality. People want to believe that truly convincing performances come from genuine psychological overlap between actor and character. That myth has existed for generations in Hollywood culture. Heath Ledger's Joker became surrounded by myths about method acting destroying his mental state. Anthony Hopkins terrified audiences so convincingly as Hannibal Lecter that people described him as unnerving in real life for years afterward. Jack Nicholson's performances fueled decades of rumors about instability and unpredictability. The public becomes obsessed with the fantasy that great actors are secretly dangerous because it makes the performance feel more authentic retroactively. Michael C. Hall walked directly into that same phenomenon with Dexter. And because Dexter involved narration directly inside the killer's mind, audiences felt closer to the character psychologically than they normally would with fictional villains. That intimacy blurred the boundary between performance and perceived personality in ways most actors never experience. Even Hall's appearance contributed unintentionally to the effect. Dexter's visual identity depended heavily on Hall's controlled expressions and observational stillness. He rarely moved excessively during scenes. He watched people carefully. He listened quietly before speaking. Those same habits carried over naturally into interviews because they were part of Hall's actual demeanor already, which meant audiences constantly felt like they were watching Dexter pretending to be Michael C. Hall instead of the other way around. That perception became almost impossible to reverse once internet meme culture fully embraced it. Then older controversies started resurfacing online.
Plaza returns to Broadway with the cast of Cabaret. Now, when it first premiered back in 1966, audiences said they found the show dark and edgy. The show returned to Broadway in 1998. It won 4 Tony Awards, including Best Revival. Here to sing Willkommen, please welcome Michael Hall and the cast of Cabaret.
Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Fremder, étranger, stranger.
In 1998, Hall appeared in Terrence McNally's controversial stage play Corpus Christi during its production at the Manhattan Theater Club. The play portrayed a gay Christ-like figure named Joshua living in modern Texas. According to reporting published by the New York Times during the controversy, The production sparked major backlash, including protests and security concerns tied to religious outrage. The Manhattan Theater Club temporarily canceled the production before later restoring it. Years later, internet conspiracy communities rediscovered Hall's involvement in the play and folded it into broader, dark Hollywood narratives surrounding him, especially after Hall openly discussed sexuality in interviews. In a 2012 interview with the Daily Beast, Hall described himself as not all the way heterosexual. Entertainment media covered the quote widely at the time. Most audiences interpreted the comment as simple honesty, but conspiracy-driven internet culture has a habit of turning ordinary celebrity statements into mysterious mythology. And because Hall already carried the permanent shadow of Dexter online, unrelated controversies kept becoming attached to the same disturbing narrative. Then there are the convention clips.
The 10th episode of the first season, doing the face plant into that room full of blood was, it was fun. It brought back memories of like slip and slide.
Some of the most viral Real Dexter compilations come directly from comic conventions and live fan events. Hall occasionally appears visibly uncomfortable during long audience Q&A sessions. Sometimes he pauses too long before answering. Sometimes he stares silently while thinking. Sometimes he smiles awkwardly after dark questions from fans. Completely normal human behavior. But once internet creators started editing convention footage like true crime documentaries, the emotional tone changed completely. At some point, the joke evolved into its own online subculture. Entire YouTube channels formed around the idea that Hall was secretly unsettling in real life. Not because evidence existed, but because audiences already wanted the story to feel psychologically real. And honestly, that says more about internet culture than it does about Michael C. Hall himself. Dexter arrived during the golden age of charismatic anti-heroes.
Hey, darling Mike, say fuck the niggas that you game with. That's your side.
Audiences became fascinated with intelligent fictional monsters. But Dexter felt uniquely believable because he looked ordinary. He was not a comic book villain. He looked like someone sitting beside you at work. That realism created a bizarre psychological effect on audiences. People started watching Michael C. Hall the same way Dexter watches strangers in the show. Quietly analyzing him, looking for hidden darkness underneath ordinary behavior. Every interview became evidence hunting. One awkward laugh, one prolonged stare, one strangely calm answer. And suddenly another viral compilation appears online titled Michael C. Hall being secretly Dexter for 10 minutes straight. The strangest part is that Hall himself has openly acknowledged how psychologically immersive the role became during filming. Across multiple interviews during Dexter's original run, Hall discussed how difficult it could sometimes feel stepping away from the emotional atmosphere of the character after intense scenes. Again, actors discuss things like this constantly, but internet culture reframed those comments like confessions instead of acting discussions.
Like, do you sometimes like want to give people the Dexter "I'm gonna kill you" look when they say it's Dexter?
Well, sometimes they ask me to give them that look, and I'm like, I'm actually already giving it to you. It's just.
That is why these videos keep spreading year after year, because audiences are deeply fascinated by the idea that actors slowly become the characters they play, especially when the character is dangerous. And Michael C. Hall played Dexter Morgan so convincingly that audiences still struggle to fully separate the two almost 20 years later. But the most disturbing part of the entire Dexter phenomenon might actually be the audience reaction itself. Fans did not just enjoy Dexter, many emotionally identified with him. Online conversations constantly focused on emotional numbness, social masking, loneliness, and feeling disconnected from normal human interaction. Dexter became psychologically personal for many viewers. And because Hall portrayed those emotions with such unsettling realism, audiences started believing there had to be some genuine overlap between actor and character. That overlap became the foundation for years of internet conspiracy edits and uncomfortable compilations. Not criminal accusations, not actual evidence. just the strange cultural effect created when an actor disappears too completely into one of television's most iconic roles. At the end of the day, Michael C. Hall is simply an actor who played one of the most influential anti-heroes in television history. But Dexter permanently altered internet culture.
Hey, Harbor Butcher. You know the nickname, and you know what he did. Dismembered his victims, bagged the bloody bits and hefties, and tossed them in the bay. Dozens of bodies strewn across the ocean floor.
The show blurred moral boundaries, turned a serial killer into a fan favorite, inspired endless online obsession, and fueled years of debate about whether entertainment can accidentally glamorize violence and emotional detachment. And because Michael C. Hall's performance felt so unnervingly believable, audiences started searching for Dexter Morgan everywhere, even inside the actor himself, which is probably why these compilations never disappear. Because in the age of TikTok edits, viral conspiracy culture, and algorithm-driven obsession, perception spreads much faster than reality. And for Michael C. Hall, the line between actor and character disappeared online a very long time ago.